All right. Hey, everybody. Thanks for coming to my talk. And thank you for having me. I really appreciate this, that you're taking the time to have people come over and present. So it's very special for me. It's the first time I actually talk about this project. I've been working on this project for over 2 years. And today I'm going to show you a little bit, not so much what it is doing, but why I'm doing it and the way we're going about it. So let's talk a little bit about Apache and dismiss this and present it. And please let me know if you can see something I'm seeing. Can you see my purposeful slide? Thank you. Okay, so Apache Tuweni, why and how? So the first thing that in the name is Apache, like the Apache Software Foundation, right? And in this talk, we're going to talk a little bit about what that is, ASF. And then we'll talk a little bit about Apache Tuweni coming from a blockchain world, but with a library-first approach, a bunch of applications, an Ethereum client in the works, and a secure scalable client / server. So why and what is the Apache Software Foundation? So that's something that if you know what the Apache Software Foundation right now, you're on this talk, you'd be like, why is he even talking about this? Well, most people that are right now in crypto were not born by the time I go to my demo slide. I'll show you a little arcade video game I was playing when I was a kid. I'm pretty sure you were not born when that game was made. And that tells me everything I need to know, right? So back in the 90s, when I was young and I had more hair and less beard, the Apache Software Foundation was a huge proponent of the open source movement when open source itself was seen as a dirty thing. Now you have to put yourself back when professionals who were like coming from Microsoft and others were making fun of Netscape and others and saying, hey, this no way it's going to work. Like those bitniks should not be allowed next to your code, right? They're going to run stuff in your kitchen and you're crazy. Fast forward to today, it's everywhere, right? But imagine back then, how would you make this work given that there is a whole ton of headwinds against you? People don't trust open source, and open source also associated with Linux. Linux has got this GPL license, it's alienating a bunch of people, and it's becoming kind of a religious argument. So before Ethereum happened, there was first a movement that was very much religious around open source. And the way they really made it work is they moved away from trying to own the movement and trying to have control over it, and they built a member nonprofit. And a member-owned nonprofit is very different. It's based in the US, based in Delaware. But the idea is that there isn't someone at the Apache Software Foundation with a bunch of private keys or with ultimate power over how it's done. There's 800 members and they're elected. So you actually get elected for as long as you want to serve, right? Maybe for life. And every year they ask you to show up on IRC and call into a phone call, get into a website, and vote for a board. And the board is a free and fair election. They have to go and run. They have to present themselves every year. They have to go back and kind of get the community approval to keep going. And the big motto of this thing has been community over code. Meaning the code is whatever, but without community, we're not gonna go anywhere, right? So imagine that's back 2003. Those people are still on Freenode, if you can imagine that stuff, right? So it's still OGs of OGs running all sorts of crummy code and running, still patching the Apache HTTP server when you want to touch that, right? So how is the project I'm in governed? Well, the project I'm in, it's just like every other project at Apache. You have 3 levels, right? So you can come in, can contribute, anybody can contribute to a project and send batches. You can become a committer, or you can become a project management committee member, which is kind of a mouthful. So now we say PMC, which looks more precious than it should be, right? The really crucial aspect of this is that when you become a committer in an Apache project, it's attached to you and your person, meaning you as a person, you did a good job. You showed the project that it was going to work, that it was going to be something that you want to make and move forward. Therefore, your committership is attached to you. You leave your job, you go to another job, this becomes a staple, this is becoming part of you. And you can continue voting on things, you can continue contributing patches, and You can even vote people into the project, right? So the big difference between just a committer and being a PMC is that a PMC, you can also vote for new committers, right? And that's it. That's how the project is run. Everything else is consensus. So you have votes on releases, you have votes for everything, from decisions about how you're going to go about the architecture, which bug tracker you should use. Everything has to be done through email. Now, that's where like crypto people go like, what? No, Discord, right? And like, well, we do have a Discord, we do have a Slack, we have IRC, we are also on a variety of different things. But one thing that must happen is that it must happen on the mailing list. And it's very reminiscent of, in a way, of blockchain, because it has to be like temp approved on that mail server away from you, or it didn't happen. Right, so you get the same like granular aspects of like, we want freedom, we want no masters, we want to have a great community, and we want to run by consensus. So you can imagine, of course, that it's pretty much drama every day. There's always one project on fire, and somehow 20 years later, everything is still there and it's thriving, right? So we must be doing something right. And by we, I mean, I'm saying everybody else, because I don't know what I'm doing. So reports. Well, there is a way where people actually report data and back to the rest of the community. And ideally, the members would want to be kind of interested in what's going on. So how do we know if a project is going well? Well, of course, you want to see like, hey, are you pushing code? Hey, is this stuff used a bit? But that's not really interesting. What's really important is, are people showing up? How many people are on your list? Is there more people now than a week ago? When was the last time you elected a committer? So it's actually a good health sign is that you keep having more people added to the project. And you're not trying for quality, right? You're not like, oh, I got 5 committers and my project is now shut off from anybody else from joining. On the contrary, you want more, because the more you have, the more diverse your communities, the more healthy your project's going to be. Committers can drop off at any time, right? You can have a career change, you can decide you want to, I don't know, take care of goats somewhere in the mountain, or move to Palm Beach like Nick. So in that case, no problem. So let's make this resilient by having as many decentralization as possible, right? And the more issues files, the more you see the project in the wild, that's better. So every 3 months, there's a big hoo-ha where you have to go to a web tool that they built. You bring all the stats about your project, it goes to the board, and the board has a 3-hour phone call where they review a third of the project every month. So they have so much work, you have no idea, guys. It's really a lot of work for them. So a recap of why is that place the right place for a open source project to run crypto? Well, it's really open source, so it's under Apache. It's very much like there's a bunch of legal requirements. You can't just like ship any code you feel like doing, meaning that if there is an actual corporation that wants to be built or using this code, they won't get sued. That's actually a pretty big deal, but it's also really open source. Community over code, really big deal, really important, because otherwise we can just drop stuff on GitHub, right? What's the difference? And you want to attract committers for themselves, not for the job, right? So if you have a job and you're working on an Apache project, I've seen that a lot. It's kind of sad. It doesn't last very long. Eventually it dies down on the vine. I see a lot of people who stay after, who want to continue helping because it becomes part of, well, this is the project I'm helping with, right? It's no longer my corporation project. So how? All right, Java 2017. That's when we started all this, right? So you look around Java, and I'm pretty sure I'm the only Java engineer on this Zoom meeting. Tell me I'm wrong. How do we do a good job at bringing blockchain solutions to the Java ecosystem? There are millions of Java developers out there. Does anybody care? Oh, guess what? No, they don't. They're very well employed, doing all sorts of crummy stuff in the back and connected to MySQL for some, e-commerce solution that you never heard of, and you will not want to see that. And the ecosystem looks a little like this, right? It's all over the place, right? So you have enterprise, there's a bunch of Oracle, very, very crummy XML stuff. Like, people get paid a lot of money to go do this, but it's almost like mainframe management, right? So now you're doing COBOL, but you don't know it yet, right? There's all sorts of weird stuff like, extremely edge technologies that never manage to escape the realm of Java, like OSGI, which allows you to do modular Java, where you can like live reload a bunch of your code, you can do a bunch of stuff. Nobody knows about this. And then there's like bedrock projects that everybody's using but doesn't know about, like Lucy, Apache Camel. You also have all those script kiddies. They're still kind of, they stay around after their first semester in CS, where they had to run their first Java servlet, and they learn about Spring, and they're like, hey, it's not so bad. I can do a bunch of stuff in Spring Boot. And then you have the big ecosystem of Red Hat and JBoss that is still there. So the ecosystem is quite diverse, but then notice that it's missing something. You have all you need to succeed, right? You can have in Java, just like I'm guessing all of you are doing JavaScript stuff. So npm.js, of course, we have Maven Central. We had that before you guys showed up, right? And we have like all these attacks that npm had. Group IDs were already boiled in Maven back in 2006. So you always have a way to verify where the artifact's coming from. You can't actually do supply attacks as easily as you can do with Go or npm. Build and testing, oh my God, we got like this stuff figured out like back in 2005. The only thing we've done is keeping more people alive and a bunch of companies like sucking on VC money to just do more testing stuff, right? And it's kind of dry by now, but it's ossified in a nice little manner. Like it's kind of cute to look at. And one of the big aspects of Java, it's really good compatibility between releases, right? So it's never really done the thing you've seen with Python, for example, between 2 and 3, where they killed the community by shoveling a bunch of things around. And so it's stable. You know that if you've done Java, you can still have a job tomorrow. But for blockchain, ouch, right? All of a sudden, all the things that you heard from Nick just now about the fact that it was limiting 64-bit. Well, guess why? Because most native types would not support those big 256-bit types, right? So how do we handle this stuff? How do we handle bytes even, right, properly, to do all the manipulations you would do with the hashing and all the bug snobs, right? Big numbers, how do you do this, all the signage, unsigned operations that you have to deal with? How do you deal with the fact that crypto and EVM are extremely CPU-centric and super hungry for your resources, but only have one thread? And yeah, you get network primitives, but guess what? It's all been redone by blockchain. So that's where we come in. We're gonna go and give you a whole bunch of bytes management. And based off that, now we can go down the stack. So we're going to take the bytes. Now we can take care of unsigned ints. Now we can take care of all the Ethereum types. Now we can take care of all the encoding, decoding of stuff, and so on and so forth, right? And based on that, now we can also create applications. But instead of having to deal with how do I even get flags from command line, or how do I deal with an HTTP server, I can go much faster. I can create all sorts of cool stuff. So for example, a wallet is no big deal. Creating a faucet is just a Spring Boot app, right? And I'll show you that in a second. RPX server, we have Bouncy Castle, we have all the crypto primitives. We can do all sorts of security for your connections. We can create boot node for discovery, right? So we have that in Tuweni now. We have a way to do network crawling, so we can connect to everybody on the Ethereum network, dump all your data into a SQL database, and then sneak on you. We have a way to run all sorts of crypto services. I have a little Heroku service that I run where I can do like hashing, encoding, private key generation. Don't use that for your actual private keys, because I see all of them. You can create an Ethereum client. You can even create a modular Ethereum client, right? And why not use Secure Scuttlebutt? If you don't know what Secure Scuttlebutt is, check it out. It's kind of cool. I'm not telling you about it though. You have to figure it out yourself. All right, so it's demo time. It's also a challenge. If you look at those pictures while I stop, it'll be fun for you to figure out what those games are. Hopefully you can see stuff. So here is a very simple application, and I'm cheating because I'm actually writing not this in Java anymore, I'm writing this in Kotlin, right? So this is a complete faucet that I've built using Spring Boot, using a whole bunch of Spring Boot annotations. Allows me to create a wallet, store it, create a Vertex server so I can do HTTP, create an OAuth service so I can connect to GitHub and make sure that you're properly authenticated before I give you money. And I have all sorts of things there to manage your state and make sure that everything goes well. And all of that is five files, something like that. So very simple stuff that we can do really quickly using all the resources of the JVM, right? So all my knowledge of my old age of having to troll through all the way Java was done, still usable. I can still make money from you guys. I'm so happy. Another one, really quickly, here's a block header, and here's how you would read it from RLP. So let's see this one. So we're reading from a RLP reader, and this is just a bunch of bytes, right? Now we're going to read all those bytes and read that directly into the reader by having a way to integrate that directly into our flow, right? So it's pretty seamless. It would look exactly the same way in every other language at this point, right? We're trying to build DSLs that are close to this. And for people who don't know RLP, it's just a way to encode your stuff in Ethereum that is going to be resistant to people, messing with your bytes or messing with your length or things like that. So having a way to go over the stream of bytes and make sense of every value coming. Another one that's kind of cool. So we integrated, remember what I said about CPU and Java being really not happy with each other? All right, we have a library in C called Sodium, which is kind of the best ever library if you want to do crypto. So we integrated that using JNR, which is a Java native wrapper. And now we can do all sorts of interesting things where we can have, for example, all sorts of things around symmetric keys and things like that. And so you have now a nice little DSL. You can interact with it as if to nothing, but really you're actually using the protected memory of Sodium. You're doing all sorts of handling of resources in a nice way and all that. One I did recently is a Stratum server. So if you wanted to do mining on Ethereum or even Bitcoin or whatever, you might want to be opening a bunch of connections. How would you go about doing that if you don't have anything to all the networking primitives, right? So here we're creating a TCP server using Vertex. We're seeing the port network interface, and then we pass in a couple of different protocols. I need to remember where they are. Okay, yeah, here. And then we're able to handle messages and here's, for example, mining authorized, mining submit, having all sorts of ways to pass that back to the backend. And we're just using functions to do that. So it's all pure function based. You can integrate that into your actual app if you want to. And last one, that's actually a Nick special because he was ranting too much about the EVM. So let me show you an EVM in Kotlin, right? So here I implemented all the opcodes for the EVM using the functional approach that Kotlin can take. It's just closures. And we have the ability to pass in all sorts of things about the context of how you're executing, right? So your current gas, your stack, things like that. So I can pop, for example, elements from my stack, add them to each other, push them into the stack, and that's the result. Everything's good. And then we have all sorts of different, operations that we put together. All right, so that is mostly it. And here's where you can learn more. Questions?
Can you post that information in the chat?
Sure thing.
Awesome. Thank you for that talk, Antoine. Appreciate it. I think we all definitely appreciate looking into code, I think. So any questions from anyone? Eric, at the beginning, was like, when to any coin, please, Plox.
Sorry, I was just trolling.
I know.
But I actually do kind of have a question. I mean, so what kind of what's the reason for donating a project to Apache instead of just running the kind of same philosophies and all that stuff by yourself? Yeah.
That's a great question. That's a great question. So the main move is actually if you want to kill the market. So if someone was to try to do another, Ethereum client in Java or Kotlin, you can actually say there's another Apache project for it. And the idea is that it becomes a reference in commoditizing the stack in a way, because it's really difficult for someone else to come along and try to make money of that, right? So a lot of the stuff, for example, I worked at Intalio back in 2008, we donated the heart of the business, the process engine, to Apache, because people stopped giving us crap about, hey, where's your code at? Who are you, right? this is just some crappy SVN somewhere, and because we used SVN back then, and we got a whole lot of contributors and help from that, right? So it's also think of this as the good old IEEE approach, where you want to standardize on an approach on things. It's a good way to do that.
So it's a way to engender trust with the community.
Yep. Yeah, and also to get 5 different companies that don't like each other to work together, like Apache Cassandra, for example, donated by Facebook, maintained by Rackspace, then by Apple, then by DataStax. And all those people, you put them in the conference room, it's probably a cage match. But for this particular project, they played along because the goal was to create the best open source software for database management.
Sweet. Philippe also had a question. Does Tuweni allow to write contracts on the EVM instead of using Solidity?
Oh, dude, I want to do that. So that's next, because now we have the opcodes. We can actually do that. We could actually serialize all the opcodes using the Kotlin DSL. Fun fact about Kotlin, they're working on a WASM compiler. So maybe we could do something later. But yeah, not yet.
All hail WASM.
Mm.
And Aiden, you had your hand up. Did you have a question?
I was just going to ask something that got answered, just in regards to Antoine's experience with Apache and what brought him to Apache, but I think he answered that last answer. But thanks, Antoine, for walking us through all of this beyond just the Ethereum side of things, but yeah, just everything in general.
Yeah, I think you guys know everything about Ethereum, so telling you about my old man dreams, that's a good idea.
All right, thank you, Antoine. Appreciate that talk.